Hello, and again, thank you for joining me on another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. I am really excited for this conversation. The young lady that I'll be speaking with is somebody who trained with me with Ed Stracher, right? The guy who taught me how to be a wizard and actually how to heal people. So I suspect, just like normal people who've gone through Peter Sage's program, there will be some tips of the hat, to Peter Sage. But you might be in for a treat. Maybe we'll weave a little bit into what Ed has taught us and how Ed has, certainly added a benefit to my life and made my life much better as a consequence of being in his training, being around him, just being tutored by him and trained. And I gotta call him my spiritual master. I'm one of those guys that has a master now, but not a master and slave, but a master as in the ways of the old master, the way that the Tao refers to a master. And yeah, again, I think that you're in for a very real treat. I'm very excited for this conversation, and I think that you'll see. Not only am I going to have a lot of fun with this, I suspect Melinda will as well. And if you're a fly on the wall, well, I think that you'll also find some great enjoyment in this. Melinda, thank you so much for joining me. I'm very excited for this conversation. And I wonder if you could maybe just take a moment, tell us a little about who you are, what you do, and we'll just kind of jump in.
Hello, I'm Melinda. I am part of my Earth experience persona is that I'm a healer, massage therapist, and whatever people need me to be. That's kind of where I'm at. I have a child who's 13, so that's fun. Um, Other than that, I don't know. I'm defragging a lot of these personas that I've held on to because I'm still uncovering the actual source of I am. And so I don't know, I guess I was kind of prepared, but not really prepared for what was going to come out when you asked that question. So,
So, well, first off, I love that idea of defragmenting, right? In any sort of computer, hard drive, right? You got these different sectors, and with these different sectors, where there's going to be pieces of files that are going to be all over, which slow down the operating system and slow down the ability to actually search for stuff. And so, when you say defrag, what has that process really been like for you?
so first is, I mean, it's a lot of quiet contemplation of, right? So in the programs that you and I are familiar with, it's like, who are you at the source, right? And then in order to get that, you have this mountain of stuff to wade through, um, that varies in, like, I don't know. What I'm picturing is like this topographical map, right? So you're climbing Mount Everest, trying to get to the peak of it all, and you have different areas of weather to go through, right? So, but then when you get to the top of that, right, then it's unleveling all of these belief systems, ideologies, lies, half truths, limitations, all of these things that we're born with, conceived with, that we grow with from everybody that we encounter, that build upon this idea that we are this particular thing, even into the purpose of who we are and having to do in order to be. And so the defragmentation part of that whole thing is going into the words that I have used to create, and then looking at the world says this word means this one thing, but when I absorb that word in my system, it feels different.
Mm.
So how can I better define it in my system so that it's not aggressive, so that it is not um persecutionist? Like, it is just, it's basically rewriting every level of my code so that I can create a more dynamic, me-centered experience, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm sure that may have lost some people, but I'm certainly tracking because, right, there's a lot of just kind of unsaid things that you and I just kind of can take for granted because we've been through the Elite Mentorship Forum, we've been
Mhm.
through, Healing Genius with Ed Stracher. And what's funny about what you're saying as far as uncovering the lies is I started a journey, right? I like in July of 2021 is when I had the dark night in my soul. Like things just seemed like they couldn't get worse. So many things were going wrong. And I had tuned into Jordan Peterson, who told me, hey, you know what you should do is create the highest ideal of goodness of which you can conceive. And it was all around Gandalf, but instead of Gandalf with his sword and fighting off demons or like the Witch King, right? He's got the sword of Shannara, which is a magical talisman from a series of books, from by Terry Brooks. And
Oh
what it
yeah.
does, oh, so you're familiar with them. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I mean, I've been growing up, or I grew up reading these books since I was a young kid. I'd spend 6 hours straight just reading the Sword of Shannara because I didn't really have a good home life, didn't really have a whole lot of friends. And so my friends were a lot of what I found in the books. And I really
Mhm.
identified with magic. And so now I see Gandalf, this dude who hangs around with a bunch of hobbits with the Sword of Shannara, that when it touches you, it burns away all the untruths. It burns away all the falsities that we carry around with us.
Mhm.
And 6 months after creating this idea, 6 months, I met Peter Sage. Uh, well, that can't be a coincidence, right? And now that I
No.
understand as I go through EMF, like, oh, we actually create our reality.
Mhm.
And then 3 months later, I met Ed Stracher, and like, what the hell? So not only did I find the means to burn away all the untruths, not only did I find a means to be able to examine the things that don't actually work for me and find the things that actually work with me
Mhm.
and work for me, but then I found a way to become a wizard, man. Like what? Like
Oh,
what? Yeah. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
my healing game has totally stepped up. Like, and I'm not even sure of what I'm doing. Like, I'm literally just showing up for my clients and laying hands on them, and they're shifting these lies and recreating past experiences that show up different in the function of their organs or in their skeletal systems. Like, I worked on this woman for 2 hours, just like in the back where she had this really severe lordotic hump, right? The dowager's hump at the base of your neck, what you get when you're crooked
Yeah.
over, right?
Yeah.
And after 2 hours, she came back 2 weeks later. She's like, I looked one day and it was like gone. It was
Wow.
gone. And then I worked on her again. And she called me yesterday and she's like, I've had a click in my jaw for 30 years. And this morning I was like, why is it sore where it usually clicks? And so she was trying to, she did everything she could. And she goes, the click is gone. It's like you are my personal healing genie. And I'm like, see, this, I can help other people. Now I'm in the moments of trying to accept that because I'm having such magical experiences with my clients, I also deserve that same kind of magic for myself. So yeah, that's something I'm personally overcoming. But no, I totally get it. Wizardry and everything. Like,
Well, and what's interesting is that I don't know where these rules break down. And what I mean by that is that I've had clients come to me, had chest pain. They've had multiple heart attacks in their past. They've had a bypass that didn't work, high cholesterol, and then they're having chest pain. And
mhm,
within a week of me working with them, because of their heart issues, their baseline energy is 2 out of 10.
oh
Within a
yeah.
week, their new baseline is 9 out of 10. Chest pain's gone, and so like, what, man? Like what? And a lady now I'm working with has impacted spine, has five impacted vertebrae. Within a week, pain's gone. And so now it's a matter of, okay, well, let me give you the gift that I gave myself and let's actually get you connected to your
Mhm.
highest ideal of goodness, but in a place where you can connect to it so deeply.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah,
That's absolutely beautiful. That's beautiful. I love it.
yeah. Well, and Ed reminds me, and maybe you'll get this pop culture reference, and this is meant with all the love in the world. He reminds me a lot of Pai Mei from Kill Bill. Are you familiar with those movies?
I am not a big gory, like, I mean, I appreciate Quentin Tarantino, but I like the blood and guts and stuff. I can't do.
So I was a huge Tarantino fan, and in the army, people said that I look like a cross between like the bastard child of Bruce Campbell and Quentin Tarantino. And so,
I can
and
totally see.
and so I really got into it. And well, anyway, Pai Mei is on the outside this outrageous jerk.
Mhm.
Just does not give a crap about your story. Doesn't want to hear about why you can't do it. But as you go through and you see that Uma Thurman's training under him, you can see just how proud he actually is when he sees her accomplishments. But
Yeah.
by no means is he somebody that you sit down with and have a beer with and be like, man, this guy's freaking awesome. Let's just talk about the game. And he's very strict. And Ed reminded me a lot of Pai Mei. I couldn't help but see this correlation in my mind as I was learning from him. So, which then turned me to Uma Thurman, so which I'm okay with. But
No, absolutely. She's
yeah,
freaking phenomenal.
yeah,
Sexy as hell anyways.
yeah, for sure.
No, I do appreciate and I classify that as tough love, not in the way of growing up where tough love was, right, do this the way I want you to do it, or you're separated, right? You're grounded, you're disconnected, like all that stuff. His tough love is like, cut the shit and fucking show up,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
apologize for my language. I don't know how it is, but I mean, that's Ed Streeter,
Oh,
right? He's
let
going
me
to
let me
call
clutch
you.
my pearls in offense as you swore.
Ah.
Yeah,
So then it helped me to realign the type of clients that I want to work with, because I can absolutely be a quick fix. I can be your next whatever, like to help make your life easier. But I'm not a drug. Like you can't come to me when things are broken and then
mm,
not do the work to follow up. I'm not invested in that. You're not invested in that. You're wasting your money. I mean, I'll gladly take it, but that's not my intention. My intention is to make it better, not keep it the same,
yeah,
right? I'm neutral or better. So let's get everybody to neutral and then step the fuck up,
yeah.
right? So when I raised my prices, I lost quite a few clients and I was like, okay, this is a little stressful. But then these new people are showing up and they're like, we're hearing these things. Like, I don't even have to advertise, they're just showing up. And I'm like, this is amazing. People are ready to level up in their life and I get to help them. I get to be a part of that journey. Yeah, it absolutely helps me, but I get to watch these transformations and the joy that comes from that and the additional connectedness that I get um, is quite amazing. So, and I know as healers, we're told to be like humble and, it comes into that line of egotistical and, right, that's don't be self-serving. Well, guess what? Like, I'm going to be a little selfish in that because helping people learn how to love themselves gives me joy.
Mm,
So I'm going to own that joy that I get when someone leaves my table after an hour and says, I haven't stood this straight in 35 years. Thank you for letting me help you. Thank you
yeah,
for trusting me to touch you. Thank you for coming in, right? That gives me joy. That fills my vessel so that I don't have to keep walking around giving from emptiness, wondering why I'm so alone and so empty and who's going to fill my cup. When I show up the way they ask me to, that fills me.
that's awesome. So, how long had you been a massage therapist? Yeah.
It's been 6 years now. Yeah.
And then how long had you been a massage therapist before you met Ed?
Um, okay, so total 6 years. I met Ed in August of last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so at what point did you see that your healing game had stepped up?
Well, and it was interesting because even when I was in massage school, like I was healing people, I didn't know what I was doing, but people loved whatever it was that I was doing. Like I never had issues. But then it was I was taking on all this garbage and not knowing how to dispose of it. And
Yeah.
so I actually kept getting sick and I couldn't figure out why. And my body started shutting down because I was carrying all these people's like garbage and nastiness. When I met Ed, I actually had to shut my business down for a year because I was so sick that I couldn't feel my body. Like I
Oh
was
my
so
God.
disconnected from serving other people
Hmm.
that I couldn't feel anything. And it took me a year to really kind of feel good enough to be able to love on people again. Um, and so when I met him, it was funny because I took 3 weeks off of work, and 3 days into it was like, no, I have to shut my business off. It's not going to be 3 weeks. It's going to be a lot longer. Um, and then you have that like darkness that sets in, right? You're talking about the dark of your soul, right? And, or your night. And, um, it took me a little bit to recognize what that was. It was like, if I'm not doing this, then what the hell am I doing? What is the point of me existing? And so there was a lot of darkness, and it was um trying to show up, and I kept asking for mentors. I kept asking for someone to help me. And so, scrolling through social media, I kept checking all of these healers and all of these coaches, and I was like, I would listen and I would kind of be inspired, but then it would fall flat when it came to showing up. And then I found Peter Sage. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then it was that challenge of going in. And through that, I met another one of his healers, that worked with him personally. And I had some crazy contracts of punishment that I could only get beyond a certain level. And so he removed that, and then my world like exploded. It was like, holy shit.
And who was this healer, if you don't mind my asking?
Um, his name is Chris Keller.
Okay, I'm not sure if I
Yeah,
met Chris.
yeah. His method is amazing. Like, it's a lot of dowsing, a lot like Ed's, but his is it goes into depths and like in the nooks and crannies of all things. Like, it's a very interesting thing. And then I met Rory Kilmartin, which
Oh,
goes
okay.
into the archetypes. And that has been an amazing journey. And then I met Ed. So it was like this stepping stone of how much I'm going to challenge myself. Um, and so things got better. But when I went back to work this last August, no, so I met Ed in May of last year. Yeah, May of last year. Because
Okay.
then I reopened business in August of this year. And I just knew it was going to be different. And my clients were like, holy shit, thank you. Thank you for coming back. Not everybody did, but the ones that do, was like, then, my prices were higher. But when they got the work, they were like, we know that this is what you deserve. And so that's when I knew it was like, I have to show up and give myself permission to exist in a higher state of healing so that I can help people show up in a higher state of existence. So
I like that.
it was this stepping stone of show up, be there, be you.
That's awesome. And what's funny is that I didn't know a damn thing about energy work. I didn't know anything about healing. When Ed first started talking, when I first met him, he started talking about reading genius. And I was like, all right, man, like this guy. And then I saw his infomercial, like, holy crap. Like, I had this ratatouille moment where I like struck back, like, I remember watching these commercials as a kid, like, holy cow. So this guy's, in a manner of speaking, been in my life for decades, and I just had no idea because I wasn't ready for it. And then when I was ready for it, I found it, but even then I wasn't quite ready for it, because then he went off on like demons and stuff, and it's just like, whoa, wait a minute, what? Wait, we're talking about reading, and then like, did I miss like an exit turn off here somewhere? And the only way in which I could process this was laugh, and I was laughing hysterically. And if it weren't for Peter Sage, like, I was drilling a hole in Peter's head with my attention, just staring at him, like, is this guy for real? Is this Ed guy for real? Like, staring at Peter. And Peter
All
just
right.
had this slight little smirk on his face, like he's heard it all before, not phased at all. And if it weren't for Peter, there's no way I would have had there's no way I would have been open enough to be able to move forward with Ed. And because Peter helped me be open, when I was thinking about Ed, I heard in my right ear a whisper, an audible whisper, likely from my God self. Life is about experience, but it was in the whisper in the voice of Sadhguru, who I'd been following for a while up to this point.
Mhm.
And so it's like, okay, all right, well, this is clearly a message. This is clearly a message. I'm now learning how to be a little bit more intuitive on how to help myself in a much better way, in a much more spiritual way. So let me see what he's got to offer. And learned a lot, like you, when I decided to do my healing full time. It was hard. I didn't know where my next client was going to come from. Um, but what's interesting is that the tools that I picked up from Peter Sage, the ability to feel certain within myself, that then allows that the outer world to then bring me that certainty,
Yeah.
right? To prove to me that, hey, this is actually what's going on in your head. Well, then I had clients start coming, and then when I got in my head again, well, then it kind of dried up. And then when I got back in tune, spiritually attuned, well, now, yeah, I'm doing a high ticket now, and I have more appointments on my calendar than I ever have, and it's a real gift. It's a real gift to be able to have people teach you not only the benefits of going inside and feeling certain within, and then learning your truth, but also giving yourself permission to find that source of strength, because it's not easy.
Oh, absolutely. I had a discussion with one of my clients who um used to teach children's church at a church that my son liked to go with the neighbor. And um it was that, like, we are asked to show up in this limited space in certain religions, actually in most religions, right? Because there has to be a level of control.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to her about this, it was like, growing up in the church, it was like, we are made in the direct reflection of God, right? We are told, if you live in the New Testament, that this person is going to come and rescue you. And so we rely
Yep.
on external saviors so that we remain helpless, that we continue to underestimate the power of self.
Mhm.
And even then, through the rituals and the indoctrination, we are we are kept from divinity and spoon fed in minutia what is readily available to us when we are fully in power.
Yep.
And she was like, no, that totally makes sense, right? So I can't even tell you how many times I rededicated myself to Jesus when I was growing up. And when I went through and re-cleared what religion and spirituality and God and Jesus meant in my system, I had 18 different versions of other people's Jesus living in my heart.
Wow, that's confusing.
It is confusing because in each religion, Jesus means something different. In each religion, God means something different. So all those times that I welcomed it in, no wonder I was disconnected. I had 18 different people telling me why I did or did not deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
And not loved in the world sense, but divinely accepted as one with consciousness, as one with myself. Why did I deserve to be punished? I don't know, right? Was it because I looked a certain way, or because my healing practice is less biblical, or because I have different words in what I do? When I say I'm sending you energy, that's my version of prayer. But if I say prayer, it's wildly accepted. But when I say I'm going to send you good healing, my family wants to burn me at the stake. Like, I don't understand why what I say is so wrong when it is the
Yeah.
same intention. It all comes from love.
So, not to make too light of it, but your family basically wants to put you on a scale and see if you weigh as much as a duck. Is that about right? A
Not all.
witch!
My
A
sister,
witch!
I was talking to my sister this morning when I was taking her to the airport. There are some family members that, given the chance back in the day, I would be burned at the stake, like I had many lives, right? I'm very familiar with death by fire. Um, but it's that narrow mindedness of unacceptable existence, that level of abomination, because I look, act, and believe differently than what I was commanded to and conditioned to as a child.
And is that something that you've struggled with most of your life, or is this pretty new for
Oh,
you?
absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and so
Absolutely.
I mean, you and I got along from the jump, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
from when and the thing is I was the exact same way. You can't help but absorb what people tell you, even if you're fighting against it. It's just
Mhm.
what happens. It imprints on you. And so I found myself with a bunch of just, BS and didn't really know what to do with it. And I really liked the idea of Jesus. And I was really coming into my own with this idea of Jesus through Gandalf, right? Gandalf being a literary representation of Jesus.
Mhm.
But Ed gave me so much more, right? Forget all the religious bullshit. Forget that like you said, an external savior is going to come save you. How about you get up and get off your butt? Because Jesus never said, "Hey, be me." He said, "Walk," like Aerosmith, "Walk this way."
Walk this
Right?
way.
Yeah,
Be fishers of men.
yeah. Well, and what's funny too is that as I connected with Ed, it allowed me to connect so many things spiritually that I never would have made the connection to before. I'd never been a big fan of the Tao Te Ching, but after meeting him, I'm immersed in it now. I eat it up. Jesus said, I'm the way, I'm the light, and I'm the truth." Well, what's the book of the way? It's not the Bible. It's the Tao Te Ching. And when you realize that the Tao Te Ching is all about this idea of stepping out of the way of evil and it'll go away on its own, which is really what Peter talks about as far as, that which you resist persists. So don't resist it. Find a way to step out of its way and let the flow take care of it. And when you look at the different parables about Jesus in the Bible, not what other people say about him, but you'll see that every time he's confronted, he steps out of the way. And I found that so fascinating, and it makes so much more sense. And it makes sense that, these great masters are effectively tuning in to the same source. And, we get confused by those who don't mean us well. And like you said, really want to have some level of control. And when we are confused about who we are, well, we're much easier controlled. And the best way to be confused is to be afraid. And I think that's really why we see so much fear going on, whether it be on the television, whether it be on the news, is because then it's very easy for people to see somebody going through something where they're deeply afraid, they're terrified, and then immediately as you're watching, you identify with that.
Mhm.
And since you identify so fully, even though that character finds a way out, you feel good for them, but you don't feel good for yourself. You took on all that garbage and
Mhm.
you don't get any of the light. And so you're basically like taking on these curses, blocking all your flow. And when energy quits flowing, just like with water, it pools and it stagnates. What does stagnating water attract? Mosquitoes. What do mosquitoes do? They draw our lifeblood. Well, in the
Mhm.
energy world, right, there's the energy mosquitoes that are attracted by that stagnant pool. What do? Well, they draw our life force. And they draw our life force where our body and our minds, well, they end up breaking down as a natural consequence. And when our life force is at full power, well, then our bodies and our minds heal as a natural consequence. And I love how simplistic that idea is. It follows Occam's razor.
Mhm.
And I never would have been able to discover it without, my great mentor, Peter Sage, my great master, Ed Stracher, and the people who were part of that community, right? You, amongst many others. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun going through that. It's been very stressful, but so rewarding, beyond rewarding, figuring out like, okay, so I don't know where my next client's going to come from. So let me do what I know to do. Let me do what I know is the right thing to do, and let me connect and let me just pull that into my sphere of influence, into my space. And holy shit, it totally worked. Like, oh my God. And so I'm learning, the idea of the law of attraction again, coming back to the Tao Te Ching, right? Non-movement is the source of all movement. But a magnet doesn't move to attract another magnet. It just attracts the other magnet. And I'm certainly not the best at it, but I am night and day different than I was 2 years ago and radically different than I was even just a year ago. And I couldn't be more grateful.
Oh, absolutely. Right. There's no way in hell I would go back and re-experience the shit that I've been through in the last couple of years. It's a lot of garbage to wade through and release. Um, I mean, it's literal bondage that you're living under, these
Yeah.
lies and ideas and belief systems that you're like, no, this is how it is. Well, is it the way that it is because that's what you were directed to believe, or is that
Mm.
the way that it is because it actually is, right? So I'm helping my clients. They say these things sometimes like, no, healing is difficult, releasing is hard. And I'm like, but listen to your directives. Yeah, of course it's going to be that way because that's what you believe, right? Money doesn't grow on trees, right? Like all of these things, all of these, like, they're cute to say, they're fun to say. And yeah, they're absolutely practical if you want to live in a linear world. But guess what? I live in a non-linear space where I travel through time and dimension, right? This is,
Yep.
I want to live in a place where I could grow fucking money from trees if I want to. Because I tell you what, when I go into my mind garden, I got some trees that are filled with money. I just haven't fully like cleared the pathway for me to reap the benefits of growing that tree. Just because it isn't fully tangible does not mean that it is not possible.
Mm.
We learn this every day. We see it in the study of physics and how like these tiniest little things create, because at the source of it, right, yeah, we look like we're fully together, but even our cells aren't even touching each other. They're just so close that they create the illusion of an actual existence. Like that just blows my mind
Yeah.
that we are so closely knitted together into these solid looking things, and even touching another person is like, that is the proof of magnetism. That is the proof of the intangible seeming to be tangible.
Well, and then when you add to that, right, the speed of light is 186,000 miles a second, and the speed from our eyes to our brain is about 250, give or take, which means it's about 4 miles a second. So what's the difference between 186,000 and 4? Let me pull up my calculator real quick and see if I can get that. Oh, my computer's going slow. 1/8. Oh, why isn't it doing it? There we go. 186,000 divided by 4. So that's 46,500 times faster. So the speed of light travels 46,500 times faster than the speed at which our eyes take in data and it goes to our brain.
Well, and the level of frequency that we're aware of in our conscious brains, right, are much lower than the level of frequency that exists outside of that,
Yeah.
right? The visibility of cats, their frequency is a lot higher, which is why they sit and meow at things that we can't tangibly see,
But sometimes it
right?
used to freak me out when I was a kid too. When I see my cat start meowing and then like looking around and looking at something like something like right behind me, like what?
Right? So I've got protective borders around our apartment, and I already know, like I always know when I need to reset it because my cat will sit behind the couch and meow at the same corner. So I know that the thing that lives in the apartment next door is peeking in to see if it can come in. And I'm like, okay, no, all right, let's re-up these boundaries, right? So that's
That's
how I
funny.
know.
How many cats you got?
You have three.
You have 3. Nice. I love cats. My son is grown up with cats. His mom has 4 cats, so he lives with 4 cats. I live in a place right now where I can't have any animals. So eventually I will. He wants me to get a corgi, which I'm not necessarily against. Corgis are cute as hell. It's about as
They're but
close as
they're
you
adorable.
well, and they're about as close as you can get to a cat while still being a dog. Um, and and I was a big fan of Cowboy Bebop. I don't know if you ever heard of that, anime. And so they're the smartest dog in the world. It's created, genetically created, and it's a corgi. And
Okay.
so I've played around with the idea of having a corgi, even though I like big dogs. And so yeah, I don't know. I might end up getting a corgi because of that. But I do wonder with your, whether it be through Peter Sage and just your awareness, or with your healing ability, just getting up to that next level with Ed Stracher, have you noticed a difference in relationship with your kid?
Oh, absolutely. Like I grew up in a family that, I mean, I had some serious fucking issues. I saw ghosts when I was 3. Like everyone told me I was crazy. I knew things before they happened. I could see things, feel things, touch things. Like and they thought I was crazy. So I shut it down and shamed myself for that ability. Um, and then when I was 16, it was like, I just got attacked by some really evil things and I ended up in some very bad habits. But nobody wanted to listen. They're just like, no, it's just in your head, right? So they sent me to the best psychiatrist that their insurance could pay for and just, kind of like shut me out. And but nobody wanted to hear what I had to say because it was inconvenient and it went against the church. It was like, pray harder, pray harder, pray harder. And I'm like, I don't really know how to pray when I've got demon heads flying at me while I'm sleeping. I don't know how to exist in that space, right? So then my go-to was to pray the blood of Jesus. So I would just, say the Lord's Prayer all the time out loud. And it wasn't enough because I lived in fear. When when I started on my healing journey, I started studying Reiki, and he picked up on it. Like, he is this energetic beastie of amazingness that I was just completely blessed with. He just can do things that I don't know, he just understands on a very different level than I did when I was younger. Maybe because I allow it to nurture. Um, but it just opened up these lines of communication where it was like, when I was going through something, instead of keeping it to myself, I would explain why it is this way. And when I am going through these sheddings of emotions and releasing of whatever's been living in my tissue, right? Which can be ugly and frustrating and kind of angersome sometimes. I'm able to have a conversation that says, hey, I'm going to be having a rough couple of days. Please know none of it is directed at you, even if that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you have any question as to whether this is directed at you, please talk to me about it. But that goes into all the different levels of things, right? So he's having a difficult time at school. I don't chalk it up. Oh, boys will be boys, right? He goes to a boys' school. Boys are going to be boys. Yeah, boys are going to be boys, but sometimes they're just dicks. And sometimes they're going through some stuff at home that we
Yeah,
have no idea about.
almost
So, how
always.
can I show them? How can I teach my kid to show people compassion so that he becomes a safe place? So that they don't have to go home and cut their leg open to feel okay, so that they're not hiding in a closet doing drugs or drinking, that they don't feel ashamed to show up. Like, he is becoming a safe place for his friends, for even the classmates that make fun of him. He's just like, you can say what you want to, right? I'm here to listen if you want to talk.
Man, that's powerful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and then also it seems like you're giving him the gift of understanding that it's okay to have to be upset by things, but you don't take it out on other people. And if you do, you own it and realize, hey, that was my bad. And that's really interesting. I like that a lot. And I found that, so I've spoken to my son like pretty much like he's an adult his whole life. And I get that there's certain, words, vernacular that I'll use that'll complete flyby. And so I'll look for that, but I do it on purpose so he can start to make the connection. I'll look for that and I can see that he doesn't get it. Then I'll repeat it in a way in which he does get it. And he starts making these connections. And it's funny just how kind of wise he is. And so I had a falling out with my mom. And this last Christmas, right, a few months ago, I decided to bury the hatchet. And I found myself in a place where I could actually look at her as a person, let go of the baggage, let go of the titles, mom, and what that means, right? Which is like, hey, I needed you to be God, but you weren't God. And how dare you, right? Not be God when I needed you to be God. And so I let all that go and, hung out with her and a friend of hers. And we had, really enlightening conversation. It was a lot of fun. Well, I called my son afterwards and was talking to him. I was like, hey, man, I was just hanging out with your grandma for the last few hours. Are you proud of me? He's like, well, not really proud of you, but I'm happy for you. It's like, bro, yeah, all right. I like, yeah, yeah. And the kid's 10, right? And like, and so, that makes me feel good in that, okay, so I'm getting the philosophy, the spiritual acumen, right? It's penetrating and it's there. So now it's like, okay, so how do I get you to then utilize that and explore that and do it in a way in which betters you, so then you can better those around you. Don't worry about everyone around you, better you first, and then the people around you will start to fall into place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, it came in with his grades too. It was just kind of like, I mean, he goes to traditional school, and I wasn't ever the smart one, so I never was really held accountable for what I did or didn't do. No one ever offered to help me with my homework. So it just kind of like, if I wanted to show them that I could do more, I had to prove it to myself first. Or one, um, it was like I just had to, um, okay, so when I decided to go back to school, and this will explain the whole thing, my counselor told me to set a goal for how I wanted to graduate. And so I set this goal. I want to graduate 4.0, first in my program. Like, I want to be at the top, right? And he told me to set a realistic goal.
Hey dummy, hey dummy. Yeah, let's wow, what
And
a
then I told my family, right?
uh
Because first I wanted to go into massage therapy way back when, like 2006. And they were like, that's not a realistic career for you. So why don't you do this program? And I was like, okay. And then, aligned with my therapist, my counselor, they're like, oh, what's your goal? And I was like, well, I'm going to graduate 4.0 first in my class. They're like, you should set a realistic goal. You don't want to go into this and then be disappointed at the end. So what did I do? Graduated 4.0, nominated, uncontested as the most outstanding student of the entire graduation class. So then they were like, they were sitting at the awards table when I got this. They're like, we knew you could do it. We
Jesus.
believed
Wow.
in you the whole time.
Yeah. Well, and
And
that's
I
when
was
you
like,
say, hey, did you see now that I did set a realistic goal?
right. So then it was just proving to myself that I could do it in spite. And so that's when I started to realize it was like, okay, I like it when they challenge my views of what I'm capable of, because I'm going to do it as a nice little fuck you. Like, watch me, watch me.
Yeah. And so I love that idea. And what's funny is I had a conversation with my brother, a while back, and I was talking about enlightenment. He probably thinks I'm a bit crazy. And I admitted to him, I'm sure that there's a small part of me that is still that teenage boy that's angry and that's tired of people telling me what I should do and how I should do it. And a part of me just wants to say, well, fuck you. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay that there's a part of me that kind of laughs at that chaos. And so I was drawn to politics for a long time before I met Peter and before I met Ed. But the problem is it was ruining my life.
Mhm.
And it was ruining my life because I would see somebody say something that made so much sense. I'd research it and see, okay, well, this makes even more sense. But then I'd adopt it almost as if it was my persona. And the problem with that is now I'm showing up to people and like, hey, listen to me. Don't you know I have all the best ideas, even though I've never been in office, right? I've never been a politician. But don't you know that just how much smarter I am? Then it got to a point where it's like, well, not only am I smarter, but now I'm here to prove it because didn't you know that the level of my voice is suggestive of my level of intelligence and just how educated I am. And oh, you don't get it? Oh, let me yell a little bit louder just so you now understand a little bit more. And it turned me into a real asshole. And no matter how right you are, nobody wants to work with an asshole. Right. And I see that different with Ed, because Ed was just like you said, tough love. He wasn't an asshole to be an asshole. It was tough love. Hey, step the fuck up. Right.
Yeah.
Let go of the bullshit that's holding you back. That's stupid. Quit with the whining, quit with the complaining, quit with the everyone giving you an excuse of why you can't do it, and freaking do it.
And do
I
it.
know you can. It's like, having somebody believe in me that way, actually was very empowering. And I like that a lot. And so now I see that politics may still be what's for me, but I needed a way in which to protect myself. Cause like you, I was taking on other people's garbage and I was out affecting the energy of the world, but I was just assuming so much grossness and it was really making things so much worse. And now I know how to protect myself. I know how to go out in the world and not to be affected by it as much. I'm not perfect at it by any means. But I can see being able to do real good now. And I can get out of my own way. I can then speak in a manner in which people like just start leaning in. Just as I start talking, people just like lean in and they want to know more. Like, even though intellectually I have a hard time grasping what you're saying, there's something about how you're saying it that just speaks truth to me. And I see that everywhere I go. And so now it's like, okay, well, you weren't ready to cross this river. So let's have you give the appearance that you're going back, but we're actually having you go way forward because rather than have you drown in the river, we're going to be able to make you a Michael Phelps level swimmer. And then
Right.
that river is nothing. And it's fascinating to be able to look back at that and look at how it seems nearly completely orchestrated, as if somebody wrote a script. And I'm just looking at it like, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, that makes sense. Well, but in the thick of it, he's just like, what's going on? I'm trying to hold everything together and keep and keep calm and be excited and be grateful and be happy just because, and then allow my outer world to be like, okay, well, since you feel that way, let's give you reasons to feel that way even more.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I do like the idea of holding on to a small little bit of that teenager, because hey, I'm human and I'm okay with that.
Little teenage angst.
Yep.
Middle
Yep.
finger to the world.
Yeah.
Watch me, people. Watch me.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
and if that's a source of motivation that then leads to inspiration, hey, all right.
absolutely. Sometimes that's what we need in order to get through, right? Because when we're in the thick of shifting and changing and unpeeling the grossness that we've lived in and under, it's just kind of like sometimes I need a little sassy asshole to get me out of bed and be like, let's just fucking brush your teeth.
Yeah.
That's all we're gonna do today. Right? Okay, I'll get up and brush my teeth. That's okay. Right? It's small victories because before it was like I wouldn't take my pain out on other people. I would take it out on myself in numerous ways. And then it became so catastrophic that it was like I had to bring other people into my pain so that they could see I was in pain. And that in itself shifted and changed relationships that I'll never get back.
Yep.
Right? So it was learning how to be in the yucky without having to suffer in it. Like existing and suffering are very, very different things. But even then, existing isn't necessarily living either, right? You're just present. I don't want to be this mindless thing that wanders around and exists and just floats with what everybody says, right? To sail with it's a sailboat without a mast, right? You're kind of at the
Mhm.
mercy of the waves,
Yep.
waiting for it to go. I used to be that. I'm so freaking thankful I'm not anymore. Like, and I don't know where that line was going. It just is.
Yeah.
Like, it just is.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. I like that a whole lot. And, just the idea that we can erect, the mast that serves us best, that we
Mhm.
no longer have to be at the mercy of our external world. The fact that we can now look at these, even relationships that perhaps we've ruined. Well, you know what? It's a lesson for me. It was a lesson for them too, because now that we understand that, I wouldn't have said what I said if they didn't need to hear it and if I didn't need to hear it. I didn't realize I needed to hear it. I didn't realize that it was going to be a lesson for me later on, that vastly benefited me. And you know what? When people hold those weights, on them, right? That those ball and chains. Well, life seems to be so much easier when they let that go. And that can be a gift for them too. Is that, hey, Melinda may have said something. Hey, Joshua may have said something to me that really bummed me out. But when they let that go, well, they feel that sense of freedom. And we're not perfect. We're all growing together. And when we allow ourselves to be perfectly imperfect, well, that's where things get to be much more fun. We no longer have to be quite so serious about life. Things don't have to be so rigid. And we can kind of just trust that what we've tapped into so far, well, it's already proven that it's been working. So why not lean in and have it work instead of just be working, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then being challenged when you still show up in certain situations, you're like, oh, this is still happening to me. Okay, what do I need to look at? How do I need to ascend? Right? Going from that, happening to me, happening by me, happening through me, happening as me, right? All of those different levels of where am I at? Why is this particular thing showing up as happening to me?
Right.
What am I holding on to? What limitations, lies, restrictions am I still writing in this code? Where's the default? I'm saying I
Mhm.
don't want to do that anymore. Delete, rewrite.
Good for you. I love it.
So,
I love it. And so, do so business seems to be going really well right now, which is fantastic. And so what's, is this what you're throwing all of your creative energy is through healing? And okay, so what are you into it now?
well, I mean, so it's kind of cute. Hello, this is one of my cats. This is BB, and that's her butt. Uh,
Cat
oh,
butts.
you're so helpful. Thank you. Um, I've been on this like off and on journey. I've started painting again, um, which has been really interesting. Because when I'm done with a piece or like, and when I'm in an intermediary stage, I'll hang it in my office, and then my clients come in, and while they're getting worked on, they look at it and they're like, "This is what I see, and this is what I see," and like, so watching and hearing that is quite amazing. Uh, so I'm giving myself permission to show up in a more me sort of way, right? I'm also writing a book, um, developing a new type of program to kind of get into. Like, as much as I love and appreciate Peter Sage, right? I still want to go deeper. Same thing with Ed Stracher, right? Like, he does this very good global thing, and I'm like, I want specifics. I need to know what it is I'm holding on to so I can identify, rewrite, and recode, right? So,
Mm,
and even in my like, even in the pilot students that I have, like, there's huge shifts and changes, and I'm like, okay, so this works, right? So it's different levels of healing where I'm giving a guide map and saying, this is how it works for me. I don't know what your particular process is, so don't do it as I do as you do, but here
mm,
are maybe some things to help you along the way. This is what I decided to look at, right? Because what I've learned is that, as grateful as I am for all of these teachers, when I try to do it exactly like them, it doesn't show up in the same way. I don't get the same healing. And then I get frustrated and I start to compare myself and consider myself a failure because I didn't do what they said and I didn't get the results that they got. Well, it's because it's not my fucking programming.
right.
It was just a helpful tool to
Yep.
get me to look at things differently. And so I'm starting to show up in that way of saying, okay, that worked for them. This is what I liked. This is what this is what didn't resonate. So how can I make it better for my system?
I like that a lot. And coming back to Ed stuff, when I take people through a healing meditation, I do a lot of the same imagery that he does, star, Mother Earth through the body. Um, and but then I've added my own. And I intuitively found this, and some of that's because I'm not against psychedelics and just allow my mind to go where it goes. And I found some of the most phenomenal meditations while just mind's kind of going on mushrooms or something. And I remember one in particular I was listening to a Lakota lullaby song, and I was really deep in meditation, and I had this intuitive sense that I should go down to the heart of Mother Earth and ask her to dance. So I did. Okay, well that seems strange, but I offered her a flower first, right?
Mhm.
As an image of her perfection and geometric beauty. And asked her to dance. And when we were dancing, it revealed to me my spirit animal, which made sense of why I act the way I act, why I'm okay being, you know, um, in people's face and aggressive, or at least used to be, when I felt the situation called for it. And when people would push against me, even if I was afraid, I'd still just dig in and push ahead more. But how when I didn't want to deal with that, I'd just kind of burrow underground, and just kind of go in my own space and close everyone off. It was a badger, right? None of this lion stuff, none of this wolf stuff. People, there's a badger. It's like, oh my God, that makes
You're
so
not
much
just a
sense.
badger, you're a motherfucking honey badger, right? You get that, right?
Oh man, honey badger don't give a shit. Well, and
Fucking murder you and your family, call it good, then go home and do some loving.
right. Well, and then I learned to do a whole nother set of visualization, and that was through my meditations, through magic. I created a divine teapot. I've got a rainbow liquid in there. I've done every little bit of healing and stuff that we've done with Ed. I've now put it in there. I've even gone through because he said, "Hey, if you're smart, you listen, encapsulate everything that we've already done, and then just project it." I was like, "Well, that's really freaking brilliant." So I'll just do that and project it into this liquid. Um, and so I do that to myself almost daily. I do that, and I take my clients through. And in what you said about how it's just not your truth, so it doesn't necessarily resonate. The client with a back issue in the vertebrae. The first session I went through mainly because I build upon. So I started off with Ed stuff, and she felt okay, a little bit looser. And by the second one is when I brought in the divine teapot, and back was just no more pain. Um, and yeah, and it's interesting what happens when you allow yourself to be who you truly are, allow yourself to grow and step into the person that you were always meant to be, and then quit questioning yourself and just realize that, hey, the reason why things appear to be working is because they are. So quit questioning it and just accept it.
Oh, absolutely. When I'm in session with someone and doing like, a magic healing session, I can feel when so I was gifted the full presence of Kuan Yin about a month ago. And so it was just kind of like I don't always feel her, but I can tell when she's interceding through me because I'm doing stuff that I've never done before. Like the ceremony sometimes is like, this doesn't make sense. And it was like, oh, don't question. We're just going to do. Right. And so, like, the level up in the magic and the healing that we've been experiencing is just, I cannot describe it, but they keep coming back and they're like, I don't know what you did. Do exactly what you did. I was like, well, here's the thing. I'm not going to be able to do exactly as I did last time because I don't remember what I did last time. Like, it is a transcendental experience when I am healing, most of the time with my massages too, because I'm in a different place connecting with what your people are telling my people who are telling me and guiding me. Like, I am having conversations with all of your limitations, lies, stipulations, all of the restrictions, blockages, occlusions. Like, I'm talking to your liver as to why it's mad and why you're not allowing that anger to come to the surface. And then I'm like, well, what can we do together to bring this to the surface so that your liver's not inflamed anymore? Oh, okay. Well, we need to go over to talk to the gallbladder. Let's go talk to the gallbladder and see what gallbladder has to say, right? So when I'm in a session, I'm not mindlessly going through. I'm having all of these conversations trying to figure out how I can neutralize or better your system so you're not walking and living in pain, where you're not walking around in hopelessness, wondering how you're going to survive to the next day, right? It's this whole very different thing that I wasn't able to describe before. So now when my clients are like, well, why are you charging $115 for an hour of body work. And I said, because it's not just body work. This isn't a fluff and buff massage. This is I'm going to fix some shit so you can let me fix it, or you can go find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Right. This isn't temporary. This isn't gloss over. This isn't aspirin for a headache. This is, let's take it and heal it. So I don't know. It's a very different place when you stop questioning. But I can always tell, and my clients can actually tell, they're like, you were distracted today. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I felt that too.
That's funny.
That's when I'm in my head and I'm like, am I doing this right? Like, it's just when your humanity gets in the way of your divinity, it's a very different experience for all involved.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wow. What a brilliant way to put that too. And I mean, you're right. Even though, I've healed some very interesting things, my brain can still get in the way. If I allow the baggage or what's going on with my life to start to weigh down on my thoughts, well, then I'll get in the way, and I'm not just in the moment giving them what they need. I'm, giving them what I expect that they need. And that, and while what I expect they need may very well be a lot of what they need, it still doesn't give that perfection where they walk away just glowing. Like, I mean, I'm sure that you've seen, like, after a session, people just glowing and just this big smile on their face, like, wow, wiping tears from their eyes and stuff. And yeah.
Yeah. So it's what I have learned though is that, like, if there is a similar trauma bond in their system that I previously resonated with, the times that I do question when I'm communicating and asking questions is it coming from my ego and my trauma, or is it coming from them?
Mm.
And so those are the times that I'll actually dig in and potentially hesitate before I ask questions, right? But usually there's some type of delineation. Like, the question will be like really specific. I asked my client, I was like, okay, this is going to sound weird. Do you have any birthdays or holidays or celebrations coming up in the near future? And he's like, well, I mean, my birthday's at the end of, April. And then I have an anniversary coming up with my girlfriend. I was like, okay, so which one's first? Well, the anniversary. Okay, so let's dig into that. Why are you hesitating around your heart space? What's going on? What's questioning? And we went into this whole thing of, like, he's trying to exist and move forward, but there's a lot of stuff that's resisting because there's things that he doesn't want to accept if he fully invests in that life with her. So then it was
Mm.
like, well, those are truths that you have to look at. Do you want to move forward, or do you want to keep holding steady in this space that doesn't quite feel right? Right? I'm not giving you directions on what to do. I'm just asking you to look at it, because it will either make your relationship better or it will just dissolve. Right? But either way is in the highest and best good when you look at it and look at all the underlying codes that's there.
Then you can decide what you want to do with it. You can decide to
Exactly.
either move forward or to, completely just sever and stop before you potentially make things worse. And while
Yeah.
it might break their heart, right. Well, that's, we live and we learn, and it's best to live our truth and let others know, if we can, with as much love as possible, of, hey, this is not working for me. It doesn't mean that means that they completely cut them off right then and there. Maybe it opens up a dialogue for the other person to say, hey, you know what, I've been feeling that too. And it
Yeah.
could, just by questioning it, could actually bring people much closer, because right, that dissonance in the heart, well, people close to us are going to feel it. They're going to feel it. That's just simply how energy works. And that's the same way, somebody walks into a room and, you feel that palpable chill, or, and you'll feel like when somebody's feeling, being inauthentic, and it can really, make us feel strange. And to come back to somebody that we love, even if we're not in love, right? Those are two separate things. And show them love, and show them so much love, by making ourselves vulnerable, and, potentially, being hurt ourselves, but realizing that, like, we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to them to try. That makes us very powerful people, because when we can own that part of ourselves and step out in the world in that part of ourselves, I mean, what can defeat us at that point?
Oh, absolutely. Showing up in vulnerability is, I mean, it's very uncomfortable, right? But on the other side of that vulnerability is the power that you choose to exist. But when you live in question, when you live in wonder, right? You live in pensive yuckiness. You live in the space of maybe, maybe. Will it work? Maybe. Does he love me? Maybe. Is he going to pick me? Maybe. Is she going to love me back? Maybe. Right? But it's that maybe energy that keeps us stagnant. That maybe energy that says, okay, well, I'm going to hope for this, even though I am also knowing that there's a huge potential it's going to fucking fail.
And I'm going to look for every possibility for it to fail. So then I can then say, well, I knew it.
I
Right.
was right.
Yeah, I
I
was
was
right.
right.
The same way that your family is like, we believed in you, Melinda. You know, they'll be like, hey, I was right. And then that's that sense of certainty where people are like, well, at least, and that's what's so bad about that idea is that people will live in that maybe when their life falls apart, like I knew it. And well, it's because you had one foot outside the ring the whole freaking time playing hokey pokey, right? And if you're doing the hokey pokey the entire time when you're not actually in, right? That's that Yoda, right? Do or do not. There is no try.
There is no try.
And if you're
Absolutely.
already trying to fail, well, chances are you're going to fail. I mean,
Oh,
that's
exactly. You're creating the directive,
yeah.
right? But, and I understand. I was talking with one of the few healers, excuse me, one of the few healers that I actually trust to work on me. Right. I'm very, very particular over who gets in my energy space. Um, and he helps me, right? Ed helped me realize that I was disconnected from my heart. Like I hadn't actually felt my heartbeat unless I drink an absorbent, like a huge amount of water. And then you have like that swishy swashy in your belly when you lay down. And then I could feel my heartbeat
Yeah.
against the water, right? That current of vibration. Um, but I was disconnected from feeling my heart race. Um, and he, the work with Ed was huge, but then I was still disconnected, right? I could project my heart energy for other people, but there was still a level of disconnection from not allowing myself to feel it, right? There's that disconnection from allowing myself to give myself grace and compassion. Um, and so he's led me on this little journey, this healer friend of mine, and it worked for a little bit. And then it felt very open and unsafe. And so I closed it. I was like, no, 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 no. And I couldn't understand why. And my grandma's in the process of dying right now. And I do not feel safe going there um, because of judgments from some of the family that will be there. But I said my piece months ago, like we went on some journeys together in her state, which was good. But he's like, we can open your heart again. I said, but it's like, if the rejection that I'm still holding on to with my family is this painful with my heart closed, I am afraid to feel that with a fully embraced open heart. And
Hmm.
that is a fear that I'm looking at right now.
Can I
Right.
can I maybe offer some advice?
Yes.
And so I want to leave you with an anecdote and then maybe get some final words for you before we or from you
Yeah,
before we
absolutely.
wrap up. But so when we first started doing, the training with Ed, well, before we trained with Ed, we first had to go through the self-healing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as I was going through the self-healing stuff, and already I started playing with some of my own ideas. And I went to a sensory deprivation tank. And I've been watching this TV show Stranger Things for a while, and so I knew the concept of this little girl is also in a sensory deprivation tank, and she creates a portal to a whole new dimension. I was like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And so I go in there, and I'm going through the different methodologies, and I'm just feeling so full of love, just following Ed's advice. And then I get this intuition that what I should do. I should create the grossest memory of which I can recall. And so I did. And then I projected, just like in a hologram, the version of me that would have borne witness to this memory. And then as I was watching, as this little boy was watching this memory, I projected myself in that love state and just that pure, just infused with love. And I went and I held his hand. And I allowed us both to watch that memory, both he as watching the memory, but as it goes through me and filters it, and then it goes to him. And so he doesn't feel the brunt of it. And then as Ed taught us, right, I just gave all that bullshit to the highest levels of love and let it rain back down on me as prosperity. And afterwards, I turned to that little boy and told him, you never have to be afraid ever again. And I hugged him. And I realized it took me a while to realize that what I did is I became my own dad, right? The father energy that I didn't have, the father that wasn't around, I became my own dad. I gave myself the love that I needed, and I changed my past. And I broke down crying, just crying for a couple of minutes straight, making that water a little bit saltier. And I suspect something of that nature, maybe not that exact thing, but something of that nature would probably be beneficial for you, because you already know what it is to be infused with love. So go find where you're afraid, and just put that golden egg, purple flame, go out there and just let it go. And I think that you'll find that you're a lot stronger than you thought that you were. And you'll probably find an intuitive approach, because you're very intuitive by nature, intuitive approach of exactly what you need, and treat yourself like a client, right? Get out of your head and just, give yourself what you need. And I think that you'll find that it's exactly what the doctor ordered.
Reflected back at me perfectly. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so, any final thoughts?
I know this was really fun. I was kind of nervous. Like, oh, no one usually wants to talk to me unless, they're paying me.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what's it's fun that, I hope that my gift to the EMF community is to have people come in and be like, holy shit, I actually know a lot more than I thought. Wow. And especially the EMTs who aren't quite sure how to get into that next step of, okay, well, how do I start my next cohort? Because once they realize, oh, I actually know a lot more than I thought, well, then it's much easier to then transition into, okay, well, let's go ahead and prove it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree. This is perfect. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate you. And mad love, right? We're still part of that soul family. And anyone who wants to learn how to heal, I'd certainly encourage you to look into Ed Stracher. Anyone who wants to learn about why life is the way that it is, I encourage you to look into Peter Sage. And what part of the country do you live in?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Coast.
What city?
Raleigh.
Raleigh. So is that
Mhm.
where your business is as well?
It is Peace and Prana Massage.
Okay. Peace and Prana Massage. So do you have a website if people
I
are in that
do.
area who they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send that to you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, go ahead and send that to me, and I'll have that in the details of the video. And then just so if people watching, can you just say what the name of your website is?
So it's through Massage Book. So it's like Massage Book at .com at Peace and Prana Massage.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
I'll have the details in the video, just so if anyone's in the Raleigh area and they say, hey, you know what? I'd like to get a nice, awesome energy massage from Melinda. Well, then they'll have a way to be able to reach out to you.
Well, and I've got energy clients all over the country. So if you want other stuff too, let me
Perfect.
know.
Perfect. Okay. So you okay, awesome. I guess I didn't ask that because I don't do things in person. I do things completely remote. And so yeah, so if people want to get a hold of you out, whether it's in person or remote, it'd be the same website.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Melinda, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. It's I don't think that you and I have spoken since our training. And so I've really enjoyed the, coming back and just kind of reminiscing. It's so few and far between that people understand the type of training I got with Ed. They kind of just see him as this bizarre person that they can't quite wrap their head around. And not that I don't, but I just have so much love for him that the bizarre is the least important.
Well, I think bizarre is just another word for supernatural, right? And that's what we are,
Fair,
divinely existing in our weird states of being. I
fair,
love it.
fair. Awesome. Well, go give your cat's butt a little bit more love. And and again, thank you so much for your time. You are
Absolutely.
a blessing to the world, and I appreciate you, Melinda.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.